Joining us now without further delay, the chairman of the all-powerful subcommittee on sea power and naval readiness, and also a veteran of the House of Representatives in Congress, Republican 1st District, Dr. Rob Wittman. Dr. Wittman, great to have you, man.
John, great to be with you this morning.
All right, let's get right to Cassidy Graham, this new Obamacare repeal bill that will bring the power back to the states. Now, the way this works, as you know, is either the Senate passes it by September 30th at midnight, or the hide behind the mommy's apron 60-vote cloture rule comes back, and they'll never get 60 votes for that. So they've only got 8 days. What do you think of the bill?
Well, I think it's got some merits to it. I like the idea of decentralizing things back down to the states. I like the idea that they can use their innovation and creation to be able to be more efficient in making sure that health care is provided. What we want to make sure is that there is clear flexibility for the states to be able to do that. You know, there's always a tendency with federal legislation to have strings attached. I want to make sure that that the states have the full capability to use what they know best to do. And there's been some good stuff out there that states have put in place. Let's make sure we give them the opportunities to do that. I think the bill does protect pre-existing conditions by saying that states have to do that, and they have to be innovative in bringing down costs. So I think those measures are with the bill. So we'll see how the debate shakes out there in the Senate. The idea of decentralizing things out of Washington and allowing states to do a better job of using their money, and especially when we look at states like Virginia, which have not expanded Medicaid, and actually in this bill, from what I can understand from it, Virginia does fairly well with this bill as far as the dollars that come back to the state. So we'll see how the debate goes in the Senate. I'm glad that they are at least trying something here at the last minute. The House has passed out a bill, one that I thought had a lot of merit to it, and the things that we're trying to do to reform the system. And John, at the end of the day, what everyone wants, regardless of your political persuasion, is for us to be able to bring down costs. You see what's happening in Virginia, where you saw where Anthem pulled out of the exchange. Now they've gone back into the exchanges, but only in those counties where there were no other insurers. But if you look in Virginia, rates are going to go up on average over 30%. You can't keep on that track and expect that insurance is affordable for folks. And listen, there's no disagreement that the folks that had pre-existing condition that can now purchase insurance absolutely need to be able to do that, and they're absolutely better off. And those folks that are in those exchanges that get the stipend to purchase insurance are definitely better off. The problem is that the vast majority of people are having to pay more now, and they get less. So their premiums go up, their co-payments go up, so they're paying more and getting less. We can't continue down that road, and we can have all the debate back and forth, but we know that Obamacare is a system where you pay more and get less. We cannot have that. We have got to be able to change that. The effort, both the House and the Senate, needs to be to reverse that and make sure that we are bringing cost down for individuals, allow individuals to choose what's best for them. I believe I've had a lot of families tell me prior to this that said, hey, Rob, listen, when I was promised I could keep my coverage, I couldn't keep my coverage. I was promised I could keep my doctor. I couldn't keep my doctor. I was promised my premiums would go down. They've gone up exponentially. I just want to be able to have an affordable health insurance plan where I decide what's best for me, not what the government tells me to buy, and not something where each year I pay more and get less.
The Senate should have passed something that you guys could have reconciled, but they didn't. And so my position on it is, look, at September 30th at midnight, McConnell is never going to change the 60-vote cloture rule. That is their veil of power to hide behind. We've had this conversation many times. Neither party is going to change it because it guarantees a perpetuation of their swamp ways and their power and everything else. So it's never going to change. So the bottom line is you have until September 30th. At least if you bring the decisions down to the states, it gets closer to the patient And then, as you say, Virginia doesn't get a bad deal here, but now, the legislator, the House of Delegates, the governor, the state senators, they can work together and try to craft something. But the alternative is you pass nothing and then Obamacare stays. And then, this idea that, people have texted me and said, well, just let Obamacare implode. And I know that Trump has threatened that. You and I both know that is never going to happen. The government is never going to allow that to happen. So all that's going to happen is you're going to get an Obamacare bailout. That's the only alternative here. And the second alternative to that is you get the Bernie Sanders socialized medicine. And by the way, were you surprised at the number of Democrats who signed on to national socialized medicine in America? I mean, were you taken aback by that, Congressman?
Yeah, I was surprised because when you do the math on that, and listen, we all want to make sure we get everyone access to health care. But when you look at the numbers on single-payer health care, I can tell you that, and it's easy to say let's tax the rich, but if you look at the true numbers there and the cost, let me tell you, those costs will be borne across the spectrum, not just the rich, but middle income will bear a significant burden in that. So it's all a matter of where do you want your dollars go and who do you want to be in control? Do individuals want to be in control? Do they want to be in control of their own dollars? Do they want to be closer in the decisions that are being made? The Senate bill suggests that the states are closer to the people, which they are, and decisions there can be made are more innovative and are closer to the people. Or, do you want a centralized system in Washington that makes all the decisions and says, here's where it is? And remember, too, John, that, the supply of physicians and providers has never been addressed with this. If that continues to stay flat or doesn't increase and you increase the number of patients there, how do you meet the demand? And if you can't meet the demand, then there's going to be, a situation where the government controls who gets what. And yes, there will be significant periods of time for people to be able to access health care. And then somebody will make a decision about, well, you get this now, or no, you don't get this until later. I just think folks in the United States, want to be in control of their own health condition and how they pursue services, not have the government be the gatekeeper.
Well, you're absolutely right about that. And I got to read this one text here from Tim in Chesapeake very quickly, Congressman Wittman, who says, I get most things, John, you say. What I don't understand is why is this new bill, Graham-Cassidy, have not done by September 30th? Why do you say we'll be stuck with Obamacare forever or something worse? The progressives always come back over and over and over again, and they wear you down and they win. Republicans can do this as well if they had a spine. Okay, so just to answer you, Tim, and make this clear, why September 30th is not an artificial deadline. It's a real deadline. And, Congressman, you can weigh in on this because the way the Senate rules work is the Graham-Cassidy bill right now is coming under the former bill that was potentially to be going to reconciliation. So they only need 50 votes in order to pass it, assuming Mike Pence comes in and breaks the tie. That expires September 30th at midnight. So if they can't get this done, if it's 1 minute after midnight and it's October 1, okay, then it goes back to their 60-vote filibuster cloture rule, and you're never going to get 60 votes in the Senate to do anything with Obamacare except bail it out. Congressman Wittman, have I explained that right?
Yes, you have, John. What happened is the House passed the FY17 budget, and with that is a provision to reform health care, to repeal and replace Obamacare. So that goes over the Senate. Now, under the rules of reconciliation, in order to make sure that budgets and those things get passed, it only takes a simple majority in the Senate. So that's awaiting them. So September 30th is the end of the federal budget year. So that's when that bill expires. Once that bill expires, then you have to wait until next year. In other words, you could use next year's budget, FY18 budget, to do that. Yet here's the issue. The FY18 budget is going to be used to do tax reform so that you only need 50 votes in the Senate to do tax reform. So you're right. The only other mechanism then takes a full 60 votes or you don't do tax reform. And I can tell you, we have to do both, and I think we can do both. So that's the mechanism that's used, and it runs out at the end of the federal budget year.
Right, which is September 30th. That's why, as I said earlier,
yes,
if Graham-Cassidy is not passed with 50 or 51 votes, if it's not passed in the Senate by September 30th at midnight, the bill turns into a pumpkin. It's dead because you can't get to 60. I mean, it's simple. It's simple math. We have to start to operate in the world that we live in. I don't know how many times we've railed against this 60-vote rule. It's going to change it tomorrow, but they're never going to change it because that's what they hide behind in order to protect themselves so they don't have to take tough votes and they can instead raise money and continue to get reelected. Congressman, one political question, and then I want to get to Trump's position now on North Korea. Just one political question, okay? And if you don't want to answer it, it's okay, all right? But I'm shocked at the money that McConnell and his Senate Leadership Republican Fund, which is designed to elect Republicans, I'm shocked at the money they've spent in Alabama on Luther Strange. This is a primary. Alabama is not going to elect a Democrat U.S. Senator in November. Not in November 17 and not in November 18. I mean, Trump got 67% there, something like 65%. So why would you spend this amount of money in a primary against another conservative? Why wouldn't you reserve that money for battleground states for senators? Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, West Virginia. Do you have any idea?
I don't, John. I don't have any insights into how Leader McConnell's PAC operates or how they make their decisions. But obviously resources for the general election are important, and if you use them all up in the primary, that obviously creates some challenges for you there in the general election. So I'm not exactly sure how they made the decisions or why they're making those decisions.
Okay, well, I put you on the spot for that. Good answer, though. All right, let's get to President Trump's. Just so you know, as a full disclosure, we've endorsed Roy Moore, and we're going to Alabama next week, and we're going to be very happy about midnight Eastern time when he wins, just so you know. Now, President Trump yesterday, I got to stop laughing. I am going to have a fun night in Montgomery Tuesday night. Let's get to President Trump's edict yesterday, sir, on North Korea, and basically saying, I'm going to just cut off their cash, and if you're doing business with them, I'm coming after you. You have to stop, including other countries, cut off the trade. Is it going to work? Does it make any sense? What do you think?
Well, I do. I think the political pressure and the pressure that's been put on through the UN, and much of that is due to the president's focus and his tough stance on North Korea, as well as Ambassador Nikki Haley, who's gotten two very significant sanctions resolutions through the UN. I think extraordinary, having unanimous votes on that. Then with the president putting pressure on China. China's really the linchpin in this, John, and now China has said that they are shutting down banking operations with North Korea, which is exactly what we said needed to be done. You have to be able to control the flow of cash into North Korea because that's what they're using to continue to grow this program. Kim Jong-un is determined to get a nuclear weapon, and you can see what their response has been back to the president, now threatening to test, the strongest hydrogen bomb ever in the Pacific. So I think the president has been very direct, and I think his directness has caused others, especially China, to act. You see the sanctions now cut off 90% of commerce with North Korea and cuts off 30% of the oil that goes into North Korea. Now, that's going to have a significant impact, and it will affect Kim Jong-un's ability to operate those efforts to build an intercontinental ballistic missile and continue to develop nuclear weapons. When you put on top of that now stopping banking transactions, the majority of which go through the Chinese banking system, that also takes away his ability to do these things. Now, it'll be interesting to see what his response is, but, if he continues to ratchet things up, I think what he's going to find around him is being even more and more isolated. So, that I think is a significant progress for the United States. And you've seen this is more that we've gotten out of China than at any other time in history. So I think being strong and direct and unambivalent in this is really a key. So I admire the president saying this is no nonsense. We can't allow this to continue. And if you're not going to take a stand on this, what's going to happen. Kim Jong-un is going to get a nuclear weapon that can reach the United States, and then you have to live under the constant threat of his irrational thought process in North Korea, the things that they do, the things that they try to bully the world. And then where does it end? I mean, I think that you continue to chase him around and, trying to meet his demands, and you'll never do that, and then he'll continue to hold the U.S. and other countries at risk.
Congressman, so I just want to tell you this. Yesterday, 2 days ago, Governor Gilmore came on my show. He might run for U.S. Senate. I don't know. Comes on the show, and he's like, look, you know what? China is the problem. We're trying to get leverage on them to get involved in controlling the North Korean situation. And he says North Korea is their stalking horse. They're driving the whole thing, and Trump doesn't see it. McMaster doesn't see it. It's all China's work. I mean, is that an accurate assessment in your mind or not?
Well, certainly China has a significant economic relationship with North Korea, the major economic relationship. So there's some mutual benefit to both of those countries in that relationship. But I think China has to understand that the continued aggressive behavior by North Korea in developing these intercontinental ballistic missiles is something that's unacceptable to the world. And I think they're seeing that by these unanimous votes in the UN. They see the world is behind the United States and others in the region, South Korea and Japan, in stopping North Korea. So I think China sees that. China is very, very sensitive to it, but China is indeed the linchpin to being able to put significant pressure on North Korea because of their relationships there. Now, Kim Jong-un has said some things against President Xi Jinping, that don't look like to me that there is a cozy relationship there. But while those things are being said, you still see continued commerce there and a banking system that works as a conduit from North Korea with resources in and out. So if you're able to cut those things off to where North Korea cannot transact business and it doesn't get the oil that it needs for these operations. Remember, a 30% cut in oil there is significant, and then a 90% cut in other commerce. The majority of that comes through China. Now, the key is going to be this, John, is will China abide by these sanction resolutions, and will they abide by saying that they are cutting off the transactional banking business with North Korea through Chinese banks? If they do that, this has a chance to really stop the regime from what they're doing there. Now, the regime has to make the decision about what they do or how they do it. I still think Kim Jong-un is desperate to get a nuclear weapon because that's how he sees himself in the world, and he looks at other regimes that have given up nuclear weapons, and for those regimes things haven't turned out that well. So I think he looks at it and says, for their survival, he's got to have an intercontinental ballistic missile that can threaten the United States. So he can essentially demand from the United States and believes that the United States will then do what he demands. My problem is, at that point, I think he'll demand lots of things, and you'll never be able to get to a point where you have a stable North Korea in relation to nations around the world.
You're so right. I'd say that what you just said in the last 3 minutes, basically, I hope anybody that heard this, you summed it up exactly what we have to do. You are spot on, Dr. Wittman. As always, we're out of time for this segment. I want to thank Dr. Rob Wittman for being with us, Republican Congressman, 1st District of Virginia. Thank you, Congressman, for your time every week. We really appreciate the insight, sir. Thank you so much.